Hello, friends and folks, and welcome back to Neutral Game, your newbie-friendly fighting game podcast. You haven't heard as much of us recently because 2020 has been a fight. That's a way to phrase it. That's in tone with our with our tone. Whew. I'm Six Mar from Scanline Media.
And I'm Miodrag, aka Real Soviet Bear.
There you go. You got it. Every time you're like, what's my callback? What's my response to this one?
I've just relinquished all branding and capitalist opportunities. I'm just my own person now.
As the dog from Metal Gear Rising would say, I'm my own master now.
I'm my own brand now. Yeah, exactly.
Miodrag, what brings us here today on this most eventful of Sunday mornings?
Okay,
so for me, it's an evening for you.
Yeah, so this is all my fault. We haven't covered Street Fighter V specifically because I think ever since we started this, you didn't like Street Fighter and I didn't like Street Fighter, and we both bounced hard from Street Fighter V. And I think we had a lot of backhanded comments on Street Fighter V throughout our episodes. But people in my Discord were like, "Hey, let's play Street Fighter," and I was like, "You know what? Why not? I don't have it on PC. I got it on PC with a Champion Edition. I didn't have to unlock all the things, so I figured I'd try it." And this is the third time I've tried to play Street Fighter V, and this is the only time I've been kind of getting it. So I figured it might have been a good opportunity to talk about it now that I have at least some context of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's an important game in the genre and in the scene, because I feel like it has a lot of Street Fighter is a big name. If you look at the history of the Street Fighter series, I mean, Street Fighter 2 is kind of the game that defined what modern fighting games are, right?
Yeah. Whenever we're talking about Street Fighter, I always recommend people check out an article on Hardcore Gaming 101 called Street Fighter 2 Fighting Games, because it's very interesting to see how close SNK got to actually nailing down the formula and the format before Street Fighter 2, and how close Capcom was with Street Fighter 1, but then just Street Fighter 2 was just the one that nailed it all down, all the main things that would then be prevalent for the genre. And the genre basically now is for most part the Street Fighter 2 formula. It's very rare to have big fighting games that don't play like it. We've only seen it, aside from Smash style games, we've only recently seen this kind of action melee fighter thing, like For Honor, for example, and there was Blade Symphony some time ago. These things that are kind of somewhere between a fighting game and a regular action game. But other than that, it's mostly just been Street Fighter.
And there's definitely, I think there's some degree to which you could argue a lot of the 3D fighters like Virtua Fighter, Tekken, DOA, Soul Calibur are doing their own thing. But if you look at them, they're clearly using that Street Fighter 2 foundation. They're just taking it in a rather different direction.
Yeah, I'd say with 3D fighters, they play much differently than a standard 2D fighter, but I think it's fair to say that even they have the basis of one versus one. You have a health meter, you have a timer, and everything on top of that is just bells and whistles as far as I'm concerned. Street Fighter 2 didn't have super meters, but it doesn't matter. You wouldn't say that you wouldn't say that a fighting game that has everything the same as Street Fighter and also a super meter is something super revolutionary. It's a big mechanic, but it's still mostly the Street Fighter setup.
Right. And then you got the Alpha series. We covered Alpha 3 previously on this podcast. Those games were interesting, and I think they added some ideas, like the Alpha counter, that ended up adding to our conception of fighting games. But overall, Alpha wasn't that big of a it was big in the moment, but I don't feel like it made any big changes in how the genre has been seen.
I think I can't remember where I heard this. It was in one of the many online fighting game content creators, and that was something I just heard like years ago. But for a long time, people, at least in the US, didn't really know how to play, the Street Fighter 3 games, like the stuff after Street Fighter 2. They were kind of like they were trying to play like Street Fighter 2, and it just, the new mechanics, the new systems and stuff like that wasn't clicking. And it wasn't until the West Coast started getting players from Japan visiting now and then, and them showing how you're actually meant to be playing this, that, people, it actually clicked with the people, but it didn't click, with the general consumer base. It was more just like, the FGC there figured out how you're actually meant to be playing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned Street Fighter 3 with, like Third Strike and all that, and that, I feel like Third Strike's game, or place in the fighting game world, is kind of, I don't know, you tell me if this is wrong. My conception is sort of that it is a game that added a layer of, like, not mysticism, right? But, like, when you watched good Street Fighter 2 play, right? Like, it was good, but it wasn't like, it was just like, okay, these people are good at this game. But Third Strike, with a lot of its mechanics, and, like, especially the parry, it became more obvious watching the divide between, like, a pro and, like, a regular player. And to me, it as a younger person, it started to make, like, pro fighting games make more sense to me.
I think it was definitely a step up in terms of like systems and execution, and just like this divide between somebody just mashing and somebody knowing how to play the game. But I think in terms of, and this is just my observation from growing up and my local like scene and stuff, but like Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat 2 and 3, they were kind of like this very easy to figure out thing, and the cool stuff to do in Mortal Kombat wasn't really the combos, because the combos had their own command line inputs. Like, you didn't have to figure out combos like you did in Street Fighter. But then with the PlayStation era, and when you started getting like more complex Street Fighter games like Alpha and like 3, I don't think that clicked with people, and the people who kind of played Street Fighter 2 like quote unquote seriously, like the serious casual players were I'm a hot shot in my area type of deal.
Sure.
I think they moved to Tekken, because Tekken had that very basic feedback we talked about in the past, because like you could just press buttons and it would look cool, because there weren't any super complex underlying systems on it. And I think it's also kind of why I haven't really like seen or heard people talk or play much of Street Fighter between Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter 4 was the next big one where everybody decided, oh, I'm now getting in. But also that was in the internet era, where sharing knowledge was much easier than the PS1 era.
It's interesting because I think chronologically I agree with you, but as far as like game, I don't know, what happened, in at least in my circles, was that after Street Fighter 4 came out, which we'll talk about in a moment, then they released the Third Strike Online edition, and a lot of people in my circles, from like the more hardcore to the casual, were like, well, I had fun with 4, let me try out 3. And we're like, oh, 3 is amazing. And really, really liked 3. To this day, I have like friends who are fairly casual about fighting games, but like they talk about, they I'll mention some fighting game news here or there, and they'll be like, man, I miss Third Strike.
Yeah, I do wonder how many people jumped into Third Strike after the re-release, remaster, whatever you want to call it, came on PS3. Because I know, like, on my example, that I sometimes go back to old fighting games and go like, oh, this is actually kind of cool, where like I played it as a kid, and I played it a lot as a kid, but like a lot of it didn't click. So like, for example, for Bloody Roar, a lot of it didn't click when I was a kid. I was just like, messing around. But now when I go back to it, I can kind of go like, oh, this is actually a really interesting system, and I kind of get what these characters are meant to be doing and stuff like that. But I definitely think that there was this period of like big complexity, and where it was very hard to share knowledge, at least like in my environment, because the knowledge shared was basically either through magazines and or people like in your vicinity, and magazines aren't going to print out combo or character guide for fighting games. You're just gonna print out like a move list for Mortal Kombat characters or Street Fighter characters, and then when home version started releasing with their own move list within the game through the pause menu, then that became redundant. So whatever you really learned about a fighting game came down to what you figured out with your friends until mid 2000s when internet access was more readily available, and then people could actually watch videos, read guides, and kind of figure out what you're actually meant to be doing.
And then for me, I think my story as like a more serious fighting game person begins with Street Fighter 4. Specifically for me with Super Street Fighter 4, but more generally for the community, 4 was a game that after 3 came out during sort of like what the down period for fighting games, sort of the decline where things got oversaturated and people started to drift away from the genre. And 4 marks sort of the beginning of a revival of the genre coming back in a real way. And I think to this day is still a pretty beloved game.
Yeah, I think 4 is responsible for fighting games coming back as big as they are now. Like, I feel if it wasn't for 4, we would still... it's still a niche genre, but I think it would be even more niche than it is now. I specifically know that Mortal Kombat 9 went from the previous 3D versions to 2.5D, specifically because they cited Street Fighter 4's success. Because they were like, oh, we didn't realize people actually wanted 2D fighters. We thought it was just like 3D. And, Mortal Kombat is one of the most mainstream fighting games, so when they did that and got even bigger because of it, that, pulled up the genre. But I think you can kind of follow the timeline and say, like, yep, this mostly is because of Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, and then also, I think there's a degree to which I know there was a competitive scene around Mortal Kombat, Armageddon, and Deadly Alliance in those games back then, but it was really pretty damn small. And I think part of the reason 9 got the play it did in competitive scenes is because Street Fighter 4 expanded the pro scene. You know, people started knowing the names of players like Daigo, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And we don't need to talk about Street Fighter Cross Tekken, though it's a fascinating game, but its place in this timeline is a little weird. And so let's move on to Street Fighter 5. Street Fighter 5 came out as a very weird launch. They were the director and stuff were very upfront, being like, "We're very sorry, this game is not done." Basically, is what they said. Ono said, "We know we didn't put out a complete product."
Wasn't it something like they called it the tournament edition because they were like, we're releasing this game so people can play it before EVO, but it's like the tournament edition. It's not the full game, and the full game stuff will be later. But most people either didn't catch on to that or didn't care, so they bought the retail game despite the warning, and then were like, "Oh, this is missing story mode."
I don't remember there being a warning. Maybe there was, and I didn't notice it. But definitely, it was very clear, at least from timing and stuff, that they were putting it out so people would have time to play it before EVO. That was pretty clear.
Yeah, I think there wasn't an official warning, you wouldn't go and buy the game and there's a sticker warning only buy buy before this date, only if you want to participate in EVO or something. It was more warning people in interviews or news articles and something like that, which your players aren't expected to be up to date on that.
And so it had this weird launch where it was missing a lot of it had its story mode was very, very weird and janky. It had basically no tutorials. It had the most bare bones of here's how you walk back and forth. It was very useless. and it was having netcode issues, and it was buggy, and the graphics were kind of freaking out. It was a very rough launch, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely I remember. It's a launch that was so bad that I think it still haunts the game now.
Mm-hmm. And another one of the things that does still haunt the game, actually, is that at the launch, the netcode was a disaster, right? And people were like, well, it's okay. They're gonna, they're working on the game. They'll work on that, and they've worked on a lot of elements of the game. And in theory, they've worked on the netcode. I have not had at all a better experience. I did not have a better experience yesterday with a friend in the United States versus like when the game first came out. I don't think the netcode has, for my experience, improved at all.
So what I've been told, and this is just what I heard secondhand from people playing the game, they did something that fixed the netcode for if you're playing with people that are not like close to you, but within like, a reasonable distance, the netcode is better. But for people you had like really bad connection with, it's worse. And then if you're playing cross-platform, it's just like, a roll of the.
Yeah.
It's like Russian roulette with 5 bullets in.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we were playing cross-platform, so it was a disaster. But we'll talk more about netcode stuff later because it's a little quick to get into that. So they started working on improving the game. They released a big story mode DLC. They did seasons of new fighters, and then they did Arcade Edition, and then Champion Edition was the last. And they have announced they have one more season to come of characters.
Yeah, and the Champion Edition is basic. So this is the part that's kind of weird to me, where they release like seasons where it's like you buy this now and it's much cheaper than it was before, and you get all the characters, but like if you have, it's only like useful if you haven't unlocked all of the characters, and if you've unlocked, let's say, half of the locked characters, it feels kind of like a money waste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was on the borderline where it was the right call for me, but only barely financially because I had unlocked some stuff along the way. Yeah, it's the way they rolled this stuff out, because the other thing to note is that the characters, this game kind of has a like it's a paid game that has a lot of free to play ideas in it in weird ways, including the fact that as you play through various means you can earn the paid currency fight money, which you can use to buy costumes or new characters.
Yeah, it seems very balanced in this. It seems balanced in the sense of if you play a lot of Street Fighter, you'll unlock probably all of the characters. If you don't play any of the characters, or you don't play Street Fighter that often, you'll have to probably buy them. But if you play like some Street Fighter and then take a break, and then some Street Fighter and take a break, you'll maybe unlock a few characters or something like that. Which is really frustrating because, at least for me, I played through the story mode when it launched because that gave you a lot of fight money. So I played through that, and I was like, okay, I can buy one character now. I read up on the characters. I can't try them, so I'm gonna just go with Akuma and try Akuma. And I bought him, tried him. It's like, oh, I hate this. Well, that's all my money wasted.
Yep, gone. Yeah. There's some missteps along that front, and I wonder, I don't know, I wonder how they feel about how those little experiments with. But enough about that. Let's talk about the actual mechanics of this fighting game. I think in a lot of ways this game resembles Street Fighter 4 as far as its base systems, but there are definitely some unique spins on it they've done for this one, and I feel like foremost among it is the series of V systems, the V skill, the V trigger, and the V reversal.
Yeah, I'd say that's the core thing that differentiates it. Where I think in the previous game, like you picked your like ultra special before the match, like between 1, 2, and I think like later you could pick like both or a third one in Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, you could pick so you could pick 1 or 2, and then you could pick a double where you had access to both, but they did less damage.
Yeah. So this one they kind of expanded that to give each character a special move a separate benefit from like a meter move from the V meter, and yeah, the reversal, which is basically just you spend that meter that you use for the V trigger to instead break the opponent's combo while blocking it, I believe.
Yeah, it's an alpha counter.
Yeah.
So V skill is, I feel like V skill and V trigger do define this game a lot, but it's for some characters a lot less than you'd expect. Basically, on your mediums, you press medium punch and medium kick at the same time, and you get your V skill. Each character has 2 now, and there are a variety of things, right? You've got Ryu, where it's like a parry and a different parry.
A parry with a follow-up, I believe.
Yeah. Which you can block. It's really bad. You can be parried and then just block the follow-up for most moves. You've got like characters where it's like Alex will like stretch and like power up his next command throw, or you can like Zangief can like charge up and gain armor. It's a variety of abilities that are designed to sort of enable the character's game plan a little more. Then you've got the V trigger, which once the gauge fills up, you can hit that and it sends them into usually a temporary powered up state. Necalli's is permanent, but everybody else is temporary. And it gives them access to an extra move, usually, and sometimes extra move properties. Example is with Ryu, you get the Denjin Hadokens, and so you can charge your Hadokens, and they get extra hits, and they can guard break if you charge them up.
Yeah. I know for Lucia, it's the 2 V triggers are one just gives you EX moves on EX versions of some moves, and the other is you get access to a nightstick that just replaces some of your moves.
Or another, like a character that I have experimented with a fair bit, and I will want to talk about later, is with Seth. You've got 2, and they're very different, where one of them allows you to do like special follow-ups to all of your specials. So like you do a DP, and then there's a follow-up where you like drill them back to the ground. Or the other one where you like throw out a projectile, and it's sort of like a sustained projectile that you can move around to apply pressure.
Yeah.
And then V reversal, which I feel like is interesting because you do see it a decent amount in pro play, but also it's a mechanic that some characters use a lot more than others. Obviously, depending on how momentum dependent your character is. It feels like you maybe once a match you'll see it from like a Ryu, but like Armikas will pop it basically every chance they get. So I feel like it's fairly well incorporated in the fact that I feel like a lot of games that have like the alpha counter, like the guard counter kind of mechanics, they don't get used very much. But in Street Fighter V, they are definitely very, very often used.
Yeah, it's usually also a very advanced mechanic. Like you need a while to learn how to use it. Like even in Guilty Gear, their alpha counter is called Dead Angle, and that's usually one of the last things people start learning how to incorporate in their game plan. Mostly because it's just like an advanced technique and it can be punished. But I think overall the V skill and the V trigger, aside from the like some character examples are usually, oh, this one's good and this one's trash, or this one's trash and this one's okay. Like ignoring those examples, I think it's much easier to grasp, and even though it makes a character like play differently, if I'm fighting, I don't know, a Ryu with V trigger 1 or V trigger 2, I generally know what I'm up against. But for example, in Mortal Kombat X, they had this I think 3 loadouts per character, which changed. Also changed some of like their move properties, but it's changed some stuff so drastically that I recall just being overwhelmed, where I didn't just have to learn matchups, I needed to learn matchup versus specific variants to just be able to wrap my head around it. And I felt that was too much. I think here it's kind of as deep as it should be.
Yeah, I think I definitely have problems with like some specific uses of it, but overall I think it's definitely a very good system, and I appreciate it. We have a 3-sectioned EX meter / super meter, which you use for EX moves and super moves, as you might guess. There's a stun bar. The combo mechanics, I would say, are similar to Street Fighter 4, but are maybe a little more harsh as far as like it's like a juggle system where sometimes you just can't juggle. The game will just decide like, nope, not this time. And there's no visual cue or anything.
Yeah, I can't figure it out. Like this has probably been the hardest part for me learning Street Fighter 5 is learning how links and combos work, because I cannot for the life of me figure out what's comboing and what isn't, compared to anime fighters that I usually play, or like even Tekken. It's just very hard to figure out, like, did I mistime that, or is that not possible? Like, I actually have to go specifically for most examples into training just to test it, because it is such tight timing.
Yeah. I think the combo mechanics in this game feel very weird, and I didn't think they felt great in 4. I had some problems with them, but you could kind of get at, like, in Street Fighter 4, my experience was I didn't like the combo mechanics, but you kind of got a sense of what the vibe was. And in 5, I've just sort of assume, like, I'm gonna try this and it's probably not gonna work. I hope it doesn't leave me unsafe.
Yeah, the only ones I've been able to do consistently are the target combos, because some characters have them, where it's just like a specific combo with a specific set of inputs and moves that are just for that combo. It's not like you're mashing together jabs or medium kicks. It's literally just, no, if you do this sequence of buttons, it's like old school Mortal Kombat style, they do a sequence of moves. So those I've been fine with. But like there were some combos I'm trying to figure out where, like specifically for Lucia, there's one combo where it's you do a low jab, or you do a low light punch, and then you do a DP kick. And the way to do that, like, that's how you finish the combo. And the way to do it is you press down forward when you're doing the jab, and then you press down forward again with the kick immediately to cancel into the DP, because the game registers pressing down forward twice, like as in diagonally, as a DP. So it gets really weird and really like strict in a way that I'm not used to. Because like at least the arc system works buffering that I'm used to, or like even from French Bread and Melty Blood and Under Night, it's just much less strict.
Yeah, for sure. I do feel like the combo mechanics of Street Fighter are a thing that, as a genre, frankly, I think we should have grown past by now.
It feels, just want to say, it feels like, how when we talked about Samurai Showdown, how the input felt really weird, but there we were almost kind of okay with it, because like individual moves in that game are so punishing and so damaging.
Right.
But here it feels almost just as strict, but I also feel like I really need to do the combos to just maximize the opportunities I get, because it's so hard to get opportunities in this game because it is so difficult to open up the opponent.
Yeah, I was playing a bunch of... So I was playing yesterday with my friend Nick, who basically got into fighting games with Street Fighter V and has since turned against the game. But was like, hey, you want to play with me so I can, get ready for this podcast, refresh my memory. And the input code in this game is so strange. You've got the down forward DP shortcut, but also there's a bunch of stuff where like it will just insist you're doing stuff like it has like so many shortcuts where sometimes if you hit like down forward and then a quarter circle, it does a double quarter circle for you, and so you get a super when you didn't want one. We had instances of there was one instance where we had to walk forward into a quarter circle, and it read that as Zangief's super, his 720. It's like, what?
So I just want to say, I think it is absolutely ridiculous that supers are input in this game by pressing 2 buttons of a type. So it's like down, forward, 2 punches or 2 kicks. I feel like this could have all been avoided, like random supers, by just having it be 3 buttons. Because in a lot of cases, I'm terrified to do an EX move because my character might just do a super instead. And I'm like, no, I'm pressing 2 buttons, I want an EX move. If I want a super, just let me press 3 buttons instead. And
you actually can get it with just 1 button. You get a super with just 1 button.
How? What? That doesn't make any sense.
It's just how it is.
Oh,
I don't have to tell you.
Jeez. Like, it's so ridiculous, especially because there is a shortcut for the gamepad to have 3 buttons at once, so, why have that? Like, wasn't it in Street Fighter 4 that it was 3 buttons for a super, or am I misremembering?
Well, it was supers and ultras. It was 3 buttons for ultras, but also supers were 1 button.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like they should have done that because I get situations more often than not where, and I'm trying to keep clean inputs, and I realize this game has a different input system than most fighters I play, but it's still kind of ridiculous, and it feels really bad when it happens.
Yeah, it does. And then one other thing to note is that this game does a different style of chip than a lot of fighting games, where most moves, not supers. Supers can do normal chip and can kill with chip, but other moves will only do gray health for chip, and that chip will not kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a lot of cases you have this situation where if you think your super can't chip out, you might as well just do it if you expect them to block.
But moving on, this game at this point has a pretty huge roster of characters.
Yeah, this definitely feels like a second this is what I expect from, I don't know, a second Arc System Works game. Like they release here's the first game in the series and now here's the second one, and this is the size of a roster I'd maybe expect.
Yeah, and there's also an interesting mix. There's a surprising number, I found at least, of new characters. There are characters returning from every iteration of Street Fighter, except for, I guess, 1. I don't think there's any character that hasn't been in a game since 1 before. But you have characters from, 2 and 3 and Alpha and 4.
Birdie's from 1.
Is Birdie from 1?
Birdie's from 1.
I thought he was from Alpha. Oh, you're right. Huh. Well, of course, Ken and Ryu are from 1, but yeah. That's cheating.
Yeah, but
huh. I didn't know that about Birdie.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of Final Fight characters, sorry. I wish there were Fatal Fury characters.
Cody and Lucia, and does Zeku ever come up in Final Fight, or is that just backstory stuff?
I think that's backstory stuff. Also the henchmen
Abigail and Poison also.
Abigail and Poison, and Lucia is from Final Fight 3. So they're doing that thing where the original Final Fight was meant to be Street Fighter 2, and now they're just going full back into just merging the realms.
Yeah. Speaking generally about the roster, I mean, I think there's a good character diversity here, but I also find a lot of, I don't know, I only sort of have a main in this game because nobody makes me happy.
Wow, I'm sorry, that sounds really sad.
I might end up, if I played a bunch more of this game, I might end up maining Ed, because I was having fun with Ed, and Ed seems to have some decent tools. But every character I tried that I liked, I would be like, I like this character, but there are so many matchups where this character is just wildly unfun.
Yeah, so I'd say up until Akuma was released, I tried every character. So I was on during my second try, and I didn't like anybody, so I played Ryu the first time. Actually, how my approach went was I went through all the characters and was like, I'm just gonna play what's her name, the Brazilian lady. I keep forgetting her name.
Laura.
Laura, yeah. I played Laura, and I did really well with Laura. and I didn't want to play her because I didn't understand why I was winning. Like, I would win a match and be like, okay, and then I'd lose a match and like, what did I do differently? I don't understand. So when I went to Ryu, and I lost far more, but I had like, it was very clear to me, oh, I could have done this or I could have done that. Like, I saw the opportunities I missed or misread or whatever. And now when I came back, I only really gave a surface level glance to the rest of the characters. I tried the Orb Lady, and I was just like, oh, this doesn't feel like I'll be learning Street Fighter. And I fell with Lucia because she seemed to have some basic tools, and she has like a few good costumes and color schemes, which I also take into account when I pick characters. But I think a big part for me is that a lot of these characters, I just don't like their designs. They just seem very boring.
Like visually, or like their combat designs?
I think like visually and just like its characters, they just don't click with me in a lot of cases. And then I think game plan wise, I actually really like the Shotos in the game. I like Ryu and Ken. I think their very basic tools are very good because it's clear cut what you're meant to do with them. But then with a lot of other characters, I kind of try and figure out like what am I actually supposed to be doing here, and I feel like I struggle with that, and I think that's what kept putting me off of Street Fighter V. Where like I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing with this because, like I don't know how to open up people with my tools. I don't know how to respond to people with my tools, which is why I ended up like playing Lucia because for her, I kind of managed to figure out, oh, I know what these specific tools are for and what angles they cover because she's some weird mix of like Johnny Cage and Ryu and whatnot.
Yeah, I think to me, like playing a little bit of Lucia, not a bunch, and you can since you have more experience, you can respond to this for me. But Lucia almost felt like an SNK character to me, like kind of like KOF style.
Yeah.
In the way her moves worked.
Yeah, that's the kind of, like when I played her, I was told by like the resident Street Fighter expert at my Discord, Dactylon, I was told like, oh yeah, Lucia is like one of the more complicated characters to learn to play, and I'm like, well, I don't find her that complicated because like having angled fireballs and having, you know, moves you need to like the dash you need to cancel and just having these weird angles you cover, I kind of like that because then for me it's very clear to say like, okay, I know when I have to use this fireball height. I know when I need to use this kick, like because it's basically zone control or space control. Whereas for a lot of other characters, it's not really like as much. I don't want to say it's not space control, but it's more like, oh, here are like the distances or the timings you need to cover, or oh, you need to do this when you open up the character in a specific way or response to a specific way.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of the like the zoners in this game. Like there are ranges and situations in which like fireball is just the default answer, right?
Yeah.
And with Lucia, it definitely seems like more of a considered tool.
Yeah, it definitely feels like playing her is an uphill battle. She doesn't seem that strong, and but I think the fact that I could actually understand what she's meant to do helped me a lot in understanding how to play the game. So that was good. But I feel like if I hadn't played her, I would probably have played Ryu again on this attempt and just probably came to the same conclusions. She's just like she's just basically. The fact that she's, for me, like, Ryu, but with a curved fireball, is basically more interesting to me than just playing Ryu. Like, I find that more fun.
Sure. So, the character, as I say, I may, if I played more of this, I might end up getting into Ed. I've been on an Ed kick, but generally, I play G. And G, I think, feels really good, except for against good zoners, and there are a lot of good zoners in this game.
I almost feel like anyone with a projectile is a good zoner in this game, almost. Almost.
I mean, there are characters where you can work it. But so G is like, I think G's great. I feel like people who aren't into G, like who haven't gotten past the hump, think G is really stupid. I think G's great. Where are you on the G? Before I make my passionate defense, how do you feel about G?
I mean, I think it's so in terms of playing against him, I think it's fun. I'm kind of not super into how ridiculous his comeback factor is. But other than that, it's just I'd rather play him than against, I don't know, Abigail or Guile for the umpteenth fucking time.
Well, you also think a lot of the characters aren't like cool or interesting. How do you feel on that front?
I think G was cooler when he was Q. That's the main problem. If I didn't know Q existed, I'd be like, oh, G is really cool, but I like Robot in a trench coat more than President in a top hat.
I do really like Q, right? Q is my favorite Third Strike character, maybe my favorite Street Fighter character. Q's great. Except for as far as like effectiveness, Q is a garbage tier character. So I think G plays really well. I think G's really fun. I like the power-up mechanic. I think his projectile is dog shit, and I don't know why anyone likes it. But his other moves are all really interesting, and I do really like the storytelling they've done with his animations being like graceful versions of Q's moves.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing I really like is having played G's story mode makes Q's existence hilarious, because basically G is this political YouTuber who films himself on street corners giving speeches about how we're all citizens of the universe, and gets like 10 views. Nobody gives a shit. And apparently the Illuminati saw this and were like, he would make a great super weapon, and that's funny as shit.
I mean, I considering some of the weird, get rich offers I've been getting from my tiny streams, I'd be okay with the Illuminati approaching me.
Right? I just think it's a really, really funny, there's been this whole mystery around Q and what's Q's deal, and the answer is he was a nobody YouTuber that the Illuminati brainwashed, and that's so funny to me.
I think in terms of like play style, so I've been playing mostly either with friends in friendly matches, or I've been playing ranked ladder. And G is one of the characters where I'm actually like paying attention whether they have their V trigger active or not, because for a lot of characters it's kind of like, yeah, it's there, it gives them a nice option, but you're not like actually worried about it. But like him and Seth and a few other characters, that's kind of like, oh yeah, now I have to be like really damn careful.
Yeah, G's so G charges up, and he's got 2 stages of charge up, and it powers up his special moves, but if he gets knocked down, he loses a stage. And during his V Trigger 1, aka the only one anyone uses, he has for the duration, he has permanent level 2, and also he has his V skill 1, where he does like a little barrier that blocks projectiles. He does the barrier and he turns it into a projectile himself, and it's such a good move.
Yep. No, it's pretty good. Like, he's a very explosive character from what I've seen.
So I think he's really fun. I like his moveset a lot. But yeah, as I say, especially because I've only played net play, I think offline, I've never had a chance to play this game offline, and maybe this game would be okay offline. Maybe my opinions would change a lot. But so much of this game, like G's, like his V skill 1, where he does that like barrier to block a projectile, it's impossible to do online most of the time because the fireballs are teleporting.
Yep.
You have enough time to know that the fireball has been thrown, but you certainly can't determine what strength it is to tell what speed it's moving, and so you can't time that shit, right?
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Like, it feels like... But didn't they also slow down some moves compared to, like, 4 in general to accommodate net play? But even then, the netcode is not good enough to accommodate their, changes that were meant for net play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these notes, and there's a 5 versus 4 section that we're gonna get to shortly. So
Yeah, okay. But yeah, in terms of character roster, I think Street Fighter designs are very boring in a lot of cases. I think the Street Fighter 3 and Alpha and like whatever's between 2 and 4, I think those were pretty fun.
yeah,
In a lot of cases, I think 4 ended up including so many characters that even for me, like I could pick multiples that I thought looked fun. But in 5, it's just like first off, I don't really like the art style. Like I could look like you could put Ken in any costume, and I just cannot get over how much I dislike his face, or the Kuma, or how much he looks like a sunflower.
yeah. There is well, he looks like a lion. Come on, be fair. So the thing, what, I think I like a lot of the ways they've reimagined some of the characters for this. Like they've got like Mayor Cody, for instance, or some of the new characters have interesting art design. But this is the game that, like, I am not in game development, right? And I have always been aware of the idea that some stuff is contracted out, right? Some stuff's outsourced. And nothing has made it the reality of that more, like, crushingly obvious than Street Fighter V, where you can tell that different people worked on Alex than worked on Urian.
Yeah. No, definitely like some characters just I don't think look good. Like I don't like their design, and it's like it doesn't like I cannot find a costume that'll make them look good to me, even like if I try. And then other characters I think look fine, but also like at a base level, just not super interesting. Like okay, like I have like you have like E Honda, who is a classic, and I'm kind of like, okay, it's a sumo dude. I've seen that a million times, and I know it's a legacy thing, but I would prefer if he was more updated, like how Cody was.
Right. Yeah, the instances where they just didn't do much is certainly a bummer. And I don't know. The other thing is, as you mentioned, just even when the characters look good, like I do think they did a really good job on Urian. You may not like the direction, but I think Akuma is well rendered.
Yeah. But there's sometimes like stuff where they try to reimagine a character to make them stand out, like with Ken, like, oh, we want him to stand out from Ryu, and it's like, well,
banana hair, do.
Yeah,
banana hair.
Yeah, and like I think Ryu is fine. I think like Ryu looks perfectly fine, and I think he's one of those iconic designs that's simple for a reason, and that's the one I would never touch. And I understand how they didn't want Ken to just be Ryu but American. But then there's also some characters like is Zeku the ninja dude?
Yes.
If you were to ask me right now, like to name something about him that I remember, like as like a defining feature of him, I'd be like, does he have maybe a ponytail and gray hair? I'm not entirely sure.
Well, he can switch. He's got a young Zeku mode.
Okay.
Where he gets a different color of hair. I always think of it as being red because the person I play uses a special costume.
Okay.
Where it's red, but I think it's not actually red.
But that's the thing. Like I don't know. Like I couldn't like describe him to you from memory. I could just be like, he's the like generic looking ninja dude, or like Ed. I'd be like, oh, he's the guy that looks like he's Swedish, which is a shame because he looks like really fun, and I actually really like his win quotes, and how he plays. But like there's just like a lot of these characters that just feel. Oh, I like from memory, I don't remember anything defining of them. Like, there's nothing that like sticks with me.
And then even like, I mean, I think for a lot of characters, I come across, I feel more positively about the way they stand out than you do. Maybe it's because I spent more time with the game overall. But even then, like they seem to have taken some of the ideas from Street Fighter 4 that people were kind of iffy on and really taken them even further. Like, remember how people had, like, when Street Fighter 4 first came out and people were like, why are Chun-Li's hands as big as her face? And they really just kept going with that. there are a lot of characters where the proportions are really weird, and they also like did the next gen version of that, where like if you look at any of the skins where Ryu's chest is showing, it looks like a canyon on his chest. It's just like, what is wrong with your body, my guy?
I think the argument for like the exaggerated like limbs and hands and feet is to make it easier to read the moves, which to an extent is true, but I'd argue that in a lot of cases, like this game has the light, medium, and heavy system for attacks. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to actually tell apart mediums and heavies. And I think like they have this like visual design of the models that's meant to telegraph, like, so you know, like, okay, like it's very clear where they're attacking, how far it's reaching. But then the animation, like for the life of me, I cannot visually tell what is safe and what is not. The only way for me to learn whether a move is safe or not is literally either look it up or trial and error. Because I'll get 100%. I'll get hit by something, and I'd be like, oh man, that was like a really heavy move. Look at that, like, you know, hit stop, that like oomph on the sound effect. And you're like, oh yeah, I can punish that. That was like probably unsafe. And like, nope, they can block instantly. And like, what? And then they do some other move which looks like a generic thing, and I'm told, you know, in my stream chat, oh, by the way, that's punishable. I'm like, what? That looks like a jab.
Yep. No, it doesn't really make sense. And before we move on for characters, I want to have a special moment for Seth. Because I played a lot of Street Fighter 4. I played a lot of Street Fighter 4. Hundreds and hundreds of hours. And I was a Seth main, and I love Seth. And it would have been so easy for them to make Seth work in this game, and they just didn't. Seth is really neat. I like... So there's the good and the bad, right? The good is they've made Seth an NB, and I think that's cool. The bad is they've made it because Seth is crazy now, and it's like, oh look, this doesn't understand what gender they are. Like, okay, well that fucking sucks.
Oh, I just thought Seth was... I didn't even watch the story, I just assumed Seth was badass enough that they can pick whatever gender they want.
Yeah, that seemed like that was from the trailer, but no, it's oh no, there was a data corruption when they downloaded to their brain, and now they're crazy.
Oh, okay.
And then their move list, okay, so it's very different from Street Fighter 4. It is not the same character, basically at all, except for like in concept, I guess. Not really a move thief anymore, which is what it used to be, except for V skill 1 is like you suck them in and you take a move from them, right?
Oh yeah,
now
it's like you get the letter from Johnny type of deal.
Now imagine Super Smash Bros. Kirby, right?
Okay.
Imagine if Kirby could suck you in and hit down and absorb your power, and then use it once and it was gone.
I'd say it wouldn't be worth the effort.
It super isn't worth the effort, and it's also not even particularly because it's the Street Fighter V and their weird combo system. It's not even particularly viable to combo into that shit. It just sucks. It destroys the whole character.
It sucks.
In conclusion, with Street Fighter V Season 5, please make you able to keep that move you've stolen for the rest of the round, and then Seth will work as a character. That's all it will take.
I mean, yeah, I'm just like, it's kind of weird to me that it doesn't work like that. I guess the thing is they probably don't want it to be like a one and done. Like, they don't want you to just like use that move once and then never do it again. But, you know, the solution to that is just make the move good in general and then have it also have the added benefit of the first use or something.
Well, and like, yeah, I don't know, there might be something you could do as far as like, because it is a 2-part move, right? Like you do like the suck in that he had from 4, where he does like little like tornado effect on his stomach and pulls them towards him. And I could see them incorporating that somehow as part of his general move set.
I mean,
but like,
you could do a bunch of stuff. You could have it like steal the move initially, and then if you already have the move, steal a bit of like either regular meter or V meter or something like that.
That's a good point. But yeah, like his special move is like he does like a Dio from the JoJo's fighting game, like lunge forward with like, you know, basically it's an elaboration on his like Street Fighter 4 Hyakuretsu Kyaku, where he just sort of stands there and you get hit by kicks even though you don't see him move. And he does that with punches. It sort of like looks like Dio doing the flurry of punches from the fighting game. It looks cool as hell. He's got a DP that's a shout out to Darkstalkers. He's generally I think he's cool. It's just that his kit just doesn't come together. It fundamentally just lacks a game plan in a way that's very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
And in case you're wondering, yes, Seth does still use him. So
okay. I mean, I just go like I'm just always disappointed when somebody uses the old skin.
Mm-hmm. But if you use the old skin, you're a goddamn coward.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I think I actually said that on my stream. If people use the old skin, they're a coward.
Looks so good now. And then I guess in honor of my friend Nick, who I played a bunch with yesterday and have played most of my time with this game has been spent playing with Nick. Kage is actually really fun to play. Kage is Ryu has excised the Satsui no Hado and it has taken on its own form. Really fun moveset. Also just kind of fundamentally busted and also looks like complete garbage.
Yeah, I the only reason I'd play Kage is because he has an Asura skin from Asura's Wrath. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kage, his Hadoken is like attached to his fist, so he does like a punch Hadoken, and that's a cool idea because he can also do the Shakunets to throw it, but it's a shitty move.
I think that's Dan's Hadoken, basically.
No, it doesn't even leave his hand.
Okay. So worse than.
Yeah, worse than Dan. If you do the EX, it'll do a crumple, but it's just a bad move. But he's got a lot of cool moves, but he himself looks like what if Evil Ryu was running from the cops and tripped and fell through a Halloween city.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's got a random set of horns. He's got like dumb like vampire fangs. He looks like complete trash.
Yeah, no, he definitely looks like somebody took the shortcut. And they were like, oh, well, we have Ryu. Can we make Evil Ryu? No, well, we made Kage. And they just took the Ryu model because they were short on time.
Mm-hmm. And it's, as I say, it's a bummer because his moveset is actually pretty cool. But moving on from characters, so you've mentioned a couple of times you really don't like the way this game looks, right?
Yep.
I think, like, I definitely have some problems with the way sometimes it can look like chiseled Play-Doh. But I do like sort of like the sort of like the flowing like liquid effects they do on a lot of attacks. I think those look solid.
No,
and
those
some
are
of
really
like
good. Those I like.
And like the like electricity and the various like special effects, like the fire, I think those look pretty good.
I think that the now you mentioned those painted things, I think if this game looked more like it was painted, like it was like Samurai Showdown style painted, I'd be all over it. But here it's more like you have the painted effect, which is, you know, traditional martial arts, you know, like drawing, writing, and whatnot. But then like the actual characters don't look like they're drawn; they look, like you said, like Play-Doh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. For some characters it works better than for others for me, but regardless, it works best when they're wearing a lot of clothing, because when you see their bodies they look creepy. And then I guess we mentioned it in passing, but just the way this game is set up through like the fight money stuff and like the in-game like events where you'll log in, it'll be like, hey, we're doing this ongoing challenge where if you do 5 EX moves, we'll give you some experience, and there's this new limited costume. But as you mentioned, if you only just now learned about it, you already can't get it, so why are we even telling you? And this is a bunch of weird stuff around that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know why they do it like that. I know why they do it like that. They do it like that because they want people to be logging in daily. But also,
Hmm.
I feel like if you're like, there's ways to limit people from coming in late or something like that. Like, or even if they come in late and just farm it all in the last possible moment. Um, well, it's basically using like live service stuff that's comes from mobile, and free to play stuff, and it comes also from games that people are far more involved in. Like you can see a
Hmm.
lot of these things in RPG style online games. Like this is stuff you expect, from your Destinies, from your Final Fantasy 14s, from all of that stuff. Like people log in,
Sure.
they're very invested, stuff like that. I think for people who play fighting games, a lot of them want to jump in and fight. Like
Yeah.
they don't really want to go like, oh, I have to make sure to log in and do my fights for my daily reward so I can unlock the progress towards that thing. It's like, do fighting game, like I would love to see their stats because maybe I'm wrong and fighting game players do play the game like that, but it just seems like trying to uh, make engagement that isn't really fully compatible with the genre. It's almost like I like to see their stats, and I'd love to see Mortal Kombat 11 stats because Mortal Kombat 11 also has that thing where they expect you to play every day for the rest of your life.
Hmm. And like I can appreciate them thinking like, well, we can take this fighting game genre and like does like spin it into, because as you say, I think there are two things going on here, which is one, people who play fighting games are like, get your shit out of the way, I just want to go fight. And then also I feel like people are they want to play and they don't, right? Like I don't know anyone who wants to fight every single day, right? There are days when you're like, nah man, I don't want to log on to netplay and just fight some idiot with lag. That just doesn't sound like a good time today, right?
Yeah.
um and so that you're not going to get people who are logging in every day just because of one, the factor of they don't care about your top level stuff, and two, fighting games are more of an on again off again thing. You're not always playing them. And I can appreciate the design goal, the ambitious design goal of being like, we're going to make a fighting game that people want to check in with every day. But the thing is, they built the systems, they didn't build the game to do that.
I think I almost feel like if fighting games were to do uh, like a live service thing, it should be closer to how arcade game progression goes with fighting games. Um, because if you look at like the arcade version of Tekken, where you have your card and you scan it and it saves your progress, and that's how you unlock costumes and that's how you edit your character and your nameplate and stuff like that. I think if that was the main way to do progression, like if that's how they incentivize you to keep logging in and playing. Like, oh, the more you play, the more you unlock. And, we have this, I don't know, this week, if you win these matches, we'll just uh, give you like extra unlocks, extra titles. But I don't think a lot of people. Like, I don't want to fight with, like, freaking the CPU in a fighting game. I can't remember the last time I felt the
Mm-hmm.
need to fight a CPU in a fighting game, and the last time it felt satisfying. Um,
I mean, I feel like it would be really, if I mean, this is maybe too much me hopping on a bandwagon, but why don't you just do the like battle royale fight for like battle pass, where there's the free version and then you pay for the nicer version and you can buy levels and it gets you a bunch of cosmetics.
Man, I personally, this is my personal take. I don't really like battle passes personally, because a lot
I
of
do,
them,
but
so the reason I don't like them is because the way a lot of them are balanced. I like the fundamental idea, but a lot of them are balanced in a way where uh, it is genuinely impossible to play more than one game or two games with a battle pass. Um, because I
oh
remember,
sure,
because
I see
like
what you mean.
you have to play it like daily. Like I remember I played like a few games with battle passes, and I'd be like, okay, so I have to play this game, like every day for 1 to 2 hours to be able to get everything out of the battle pass by the end of the season. And then people go
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's just 1 hour. Like they go, why are you complaining? It's like, yeah, it's 1 hour a day out of my 24 hour life. I have other things I want to do, and I'm always in the mood to play it. Um, and then when
I
you
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I think this is a psychological thing, and I get it. But like, I mean, I play a bunch of Apex Legends, which has a battle pass, and it's like I am trying to get everything in that battle pass. But like, if I were to play Fortnite, the battle pass would be like a fun bonus. I certainly wouldn't be trying to get everything. I think you just need to get over the psychological idea that you need to get everything, because you're just getting more skins and more UI elements. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know. It's just like I just don't I don't personally like the idea of I don't personally like the idea of games trying to make themselves your main game, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
and the reason why a lot of games do that is because the best way to measure how well your game is doing is like daily active users, peak users, monthly, weekly active users, because these are all stats that are actionable. Like you can say, oh, we have a dip in this many people playing, so we need to incentivize people playing more regularly so the numbers are higher, because so it becomes this weird thing where you get the you have the indicator, which everybody agrees is a good indicator, but you're trying to maximize that indicator, so you'll do things that aren't necessarily making people enjoy themselves more, but will actually maximize login time. That's why we have these daily login things, because if I just need to spend like 2 minutes per day jumping in the game to just get a thing and then log back, that's low effort for me, and then my numbers as a game developer look good because I say, look how many people jumped in today. So that's also like one of the reasons why live service games kind of do these things. And Battle Pass is just another thing of that. It's just like an evolution of that, and I think it's more rewarding for players because they get more stuff that way. And if you have one game with a Battle Pass and you really like that game, it's a net gain for you.
Yeah.
But if I was to play like multiple games, I'd be like, well, I can only really pick one because I don't have the time to play multiple of these games to get my money's worth out of Battle Pass. So,
Sure.
And then we're getting into the situation of, okay, do I buy, a hypothetical Street Fighter V Battle Pass, or do I buy an MTG Arena Battle Pass? And then all of a sudden, Street Fighter is competing with Magic the Gathering, which makes absolutely no sense because they shouldn't be competitors, but all of a sudden they are because they're getting the same like going in on the same target, which is my time.
Sure.
So that's kind of my logic towards all of this. But to go back to this, yeah, this is basically trying to be set up as a live service game, and a lot of things are there, I think, in their attempt to like maximize people jumping into the game. But I also get the feeling that a lot of the methods they're using, and I don't say this like in a derogatory term, like, oh, it's like mobile tactics because mobile tactics are bad. I mean more in the sense of, I feel like the way a fighting game is played is not played the same way as the games they referenced for this service stuff that they did.
Sure.
And I think what they should have done is, let's look at how people play fighting games. Like we have the arcades in Japan. We know how people play fighting games there. Let's look at that and see how we can put a layer on top of that that'll incentivize people to play every day, rather than doing, what we know is tried and true for, a mobile RPG or an MMO or an FPS or something else that has, a very long session length.
Yeah. And then another thing that ties into this games as a service thing, and it's just a very interesting, Capcom pushing boundaries here, was the whole ad fiasco. Do you remember this whole thing very well?
I remember it existing, but I don't remember the details of it.
So basically, and this is still there, you can still see the remnants of this in the game. They added a special variant of the default costume to every character called Ad Style, where there were pre-designated spots where you could place advertisements on the character's body. And then they were going to have ads in the loading screen and also ads on some of the stages.
So this is a bad example of what I mentioned, where they should figure out how people play fighting games and then add something on top of that. Because this is the part of I don't really want this in a full retail product. If this was a free game, I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go. I expect ads in a free game or in like a very low barrier to entry game that doesn't have DLC or otherwise. But um doing a premium product that has DLC and then doing ads on top of that is a bit ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives
Yep.
a very poor look.
And you can still see, like, I don't think they ever actually got advertisers for it, because they ended up deciding that this was a bad idea so quickly. They were still trying to sign those contracts when everything turned against them. But ad style is still in the game. And for a while after, in the run up to Championship Edition or Champion Edition, and for a while after it came out, you would get loading splash screens telling you to buy Champion Edition, even if you already had and were literally playing it.
Nice. I think so. It's very hard to know where this came from. Like, it could have been just like a suggestion from somebody on their team. It could have been, project leads. It could have been Capcom management or whatever, because the game wasn't earning them enough money, and they were like, okay, what can we do to get like the target figures we want, like money wise, and like they went like, oh, let's do ad stuff or whatever. So I don't know where this came from, but I think it's like a very not like how we call it. It was very like uninformed decision. Like, I think it's like they're very unaware of like the perception this brought onto them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all that said, we've talked about the netcode being bad. We mentioned the tutorials were bad at launch. They added more stuff, but the tutorials never really got good. They're still pretty bad and weird. Where like there are a lot of tutorials where they're non-interactive. They just play a video, and that's really strange choice. The input code's rough. I don't know. And for me, a lot of this comes down to the fact that, so I mentioned my friend Nick, who got into fighting games with Street Fighter V, right? Mm-hmm. And we would play, and there came a day where we were logging on, and we had played Street Fighter V fairly recently, and we were like, we want to play fighting games, but we just don't want to play Street Fighter V. And Nick has kind of bumped off of anime fighters, just hasn't gotten the feel for him. And Nick was like, hey, why don't we play Street Fighter 4? And ever since then, we've been similarly regularly playing Ultra Street Fighter 4, including like within the last week. And playing them so close in proximity, Street Fighter 4 is so much a better game that it's kind of strange to me.
Yeah, I wonder, like, I'm not as like in depth familiar with Street Fighter 4. I did play it, but not that much. I wonder how I would react trying to get into it versus trying to get into Street Fighter 5.
I wonder. I feel like Street Fighter 4, like, I don't like the focus attack system that much. I do think the V system and stuff is a lot more interesting, but I think the combos, you get a sense that I think they're kind of strange in the way that Street Fighter combos are strange, but like you get a sense for them and then they're fine. The netcode is way better, the input code is better, the characters have like clearer like game plans and objectives.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I wonder. I said this about a lot of things. I would really like to see the design process behind Street Fighter V, like what they were targeting. Like, was it tournament play they were targeting? Was it esports? I feel like they were trying to target esports, and I think, like, based on like how, 5 is presented, and I think a lot of the design decisions they've made were to make it more watchable, and to make it like quote unquote easier to get into. Because I'm just gonna go into assumption here. You can correct me. Like, is Street Fighter 4 harder to play like on a medium level than 5?
No, I would say it's easier.
It's easier to play Street Fighter 4.
Yes.
I don't know like what their design goals were. Like I'd be very curious about that. Because like with this, like with Street Fighter 5, I'm not like the Street Fighter is basically on the top of, you know, the reputation. Like it's the fighting game that's usually the best performing in the Evo in terms of like people, in terms of reputation and stuff like that. But I just kind of wonder, like, did they want to go more esports? Did they want to streamline some things? Did they want to make it more technical? Were they not happy with some stuff in Street Fighter 5 and they wanted to build up on that? Like, I do wonder what their expectations were of Street Fighter 5 during development, and what their expectations are of Street Fighter 5 now, especially after they've done after Capcom has earned a ton of money from stuff like, I don't know, Monster Hunter and DMC and the new Resident Evils.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think that with the V systems, part of the idea was to make a game where, on sort of a more fundamental mechanical level, characters felt different.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I can't really say. If they were trying to lean into esports, I think it backfired pretty hard, because Street Fighter 4 was, you know, like the main stage game at EVO for years, even well after its prime. And then Street Fighter 5 was main stage for a while. Last year in 2019, it was not like, it wasn't the final, you know, the capper to the show anymore. It was still on the main stage, but Fighters was now the last game, the big hype game. And then this year, the plan was that Street Fighter 5 wouldn't even show up. And now that's definitely the plan because of EVO Online.
Mm-hmm.
And then even there was a recent tournament last week. There was the Capcom Pro Tour had an online event where several, the favorite to win the tournament as well as one other player quit the tournament and said they would not compete in the game anymore because they were so infuriated with how bad the netcode was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think it's almost not really I don't think it's necessarily something Capcom could have prepared for. Like, obviously, if they had better netcode, they will prepare for this. That's kind of like the obvious takeaway here. So, get better netcode. But, if you asked anybody 3 years ago, hey, our real-life tournaments are held in person across the globe, they're this super glamorous event, will actually, get damaged actively, directly by having bad netcode. Would you believe that? Because nobody predicted the global pandemic, right?
Well, but I do believe that it's been the case for a while now that, I mean, you have people you have the old guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have Justin Wong, you have Alex Valle, these guys who still show up to tournament. But a lot of some of the newer names, you've got Apology Man, you've got Cloud 805, you've got these people who are but you get even in Street Fighter 5, you've got Punk, right? These are characters who grew up on netplay. That's what got them into competitive fighting games. You have these online warriors who get confident and then show up to tournaments, and even the ones that are really good become stars, and the ones that aren't become the foundation, right? I follow a lot of fighting game people on Twitter, and a lot of them in the last couple of days were retweeting God, with locals disbanded, I have a renewed appreciation for those online warriors who show up and cheerfully go 0-2. God bless them. Because netplay feeds the community.
So I absolutely get that, but it is okay. So here I gotta give you what I assume is corporate speak, where it's will the netcode work for most people playing? Most people being people who live in close proximity, who live in the States, who live in Europe, who live in Japan. They don't come with the expectation that people will play, Japan, Europe that often, because they'll be oh, that's already technological. Technology doesn't allow it, even if it maybe would. it's kind of like a two-step process where they're like, oh, it's gonna be good enough to have a community that's gonna go to a tournament, but like this is like a direct consequence where it's like there's a global pandemic, we need to have our real life tournament online now, and all of a sudden that's not something we actually ever actively expected. So now that we're actually being damaged by people stepping down during the tournament, like it's an active consequence of it.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that this is not a thing they necessarily they couldn't have anticipated, but they also, I mean, like there is a reckless disregard for the maintenance of this game.
Yeah, no, I think the netcode is not good, and I think it's like the competitors are doing much better with their like even like some games with delay based netcode. I've had a more pleasant experience in some matches in Street Fighter,
and like I mean even just like beyond like I don't even beyond the idea that netcode isn't good, they've had so many opportunities. This game has been out for years now, and they've been developing for it. They just haven't addressed the problem.
No, and I do wonder how much of that is like them. Maybe I mean when we say they haven't addressed it, I like to say that we think of like Capcom in general and not really like the individual devs because.
Of course.
I could imagine that it's just like them being like, oh, this is more brand recognition than actually actively earning us money. So here's the budget, and somebody going, oh, well, technically, if we make a DLC character, that's gonna earn more money because we're selling the DLC character. We're not selling the netcode, even though the byproduct of a good netcode is more people playing or more money. But again, that's a two-step process versus a one-step process, which is easier to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like you don't have like I know there are exceptions to every rule, right? But you don't have people like on the ground floor building a game like Street Fighter who don't love the game and are working their asses off. That's not how this industry works. I have problems with the game. I have nothing but respect for the team.
Yeah, but yeah, I hope. I hope this is like a wake up call into like what they need to invest in the future and how to invest if there is a future. I mean, if there is a future, that's too dramatic. There probably is a future for Street Fighter, but I don't know what kind of future it is.
Yeah, I think it might be a while before we get Street Fighter 6. It might be another like Street Fighter 4-esque revival. We are at least going to get one more season. We're going to get 5 more characters. Who are you looking to see here, Mio?
I mean, Scalomania went fighting EX Slayer, so that's down for the count.
Well, I mean, they could make the deal, right? They might be able to. They might be able to. No, they gave Skullomania to fucking like
SNK Heroines.
To SNK Heroines, and that was like they knew that game was going to be bad. That was just a pure fuck you to Capcom.
Yeah. I mean, I would love Skullomania because Skullomania is great. Honestly, this is gonna be super far-fetched. I would like a guest character. Like an actual guest character from within Capcom. Like, I don't want a guest character. I don't want, like, an SNK or a Tekken character or whatever. I would really like them to just take a non-Final Fight character from their repertoire and just put them in. Like, I think that would be rad. Like, someone from Darkstalkers or from Project Justice or I don't know, even like you can bring somebody from Red Earth for all I care.
I would be really happy to see some of the characters from Project Justice. That would be really cool to me.
Yeah.
I think I would be really happy to see from Street Fighter returning characters like Makoto would be a welcome addition to me.
Yeah, that would be a good character.
And I'm the only person in the world who okay, as I say, I've been playing a lot of Street Fighter 4, and you always have to say this thing with Street Fighter, because this is what Street Fighter is. This character's super racist, but Hakan's really fun.
Yeah, Hakan's pretty fun. I liked watching Hakan matches because Hakan was something like garbage tier for a while, and then some people just made him work.
They kept buffing his oiled up stuff until he was like he wasn't like good, but he was good enough that the fact that no one had any matchup knowledge meant he could sometimes just clown on people.
Yeah. I think from the only like returning actual Street Fighter character I'd like playable is Dan, but nobody's gonna like buy Dan, and they're never gonna sell Dan.
Yeah.
Who would pay money for a joke character? It's ridiculous.
Yep.
I would.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, but most people won't.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't, to be honest.
Yeah. So Dan's like out of that, which is like a shame because I like Dan as a joke character more than what's called Fang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fang, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, they're not going to fix the netcode, right? It's way too late in the game for that.
I mean, they have rollback. So the main thing when people say like it's too late to fix the netcode, it's usually, oh, you can't just add rollback to a thing. So they have rollback. They just have their own proprietary rollback instead of using GPO rollback. So they probably can't put. This is my estimate. I'm not a programmer, so I don't know. But I assume they can't just put GGPO in there, because that would be too much work. I mean, they could. It would just take a long time. But they could probably do improvements to their own netcode, possibly by seeing how GGPO works and like seeing where they can optimize their stuff. So I don't think it's too late. But them saying that it's like one more season sounds like the game is now in overtime. Like they want to wrap it up, but now they're kind of like, oh, we can do one more season. So they're doing it. How this sounds to me is... So this is done by Dimps, right? This is like...
Yeah,
an external studio. They're probably either like wrapping up Street Fighter and putting it into like maintenance mode after this, or they're setting up for another project. And usually when you're starting a new project, you can't really have your full team on the new project. Like you kind of scale it up. Like you start with small and then you add more people as the project advances. So it could be that they had enough people left over that they decided, oh, we can actually do one more season at this capacity while the other team is starting on a new project, and then we're going to move the rest of the team to that project. Like, that's just, like, at least from, like, my knowledge of project management is how you can do
and
it.
here's a thing that I'm curious about, because this is a theory that I've had, but I don't work in game dev, right? One of the things that I wonder is, with a bunch of people working from home because of COVID, if it's easier to develop new content for stuff you already have than to try and build a new project.
It really depends on the stuff you're developing. Like if they're developing characters, like the art assets might be easier. Implementation might be longer. It really depends on the team.
Okay.
Usually the thing that suffers the most from remote work is stuff that has a lot of iteration involved, because when there's a lot of iteration, where it's implementing new things or testing new things, it's much easier to just talk to the people and organize that. But if you're something like in an early phase of a project, that involves a lot of meetings, a lot of syncing up to estimate the scope and all of that. So that's much easier to do in person. So it could also be, they're working from home, and it's much easier for them to do another season of this, than start like drafting the next project, which is like Street Fighter 6 or something else. So it could also be that. But in terms of individual people working on stuff like, the meshes or something like that, you usually just like, even when you're like programming, like, I don't know, new moves or whatever, or making VFX for new moves, a lot of that is just like, I'm going to work on this for a while, and I'm only going to stop to get clarification on, hey, how's your dish look? How's the progress on this? And you just give people status reports. But the thing that suffers the most from remote work is like, do I need to talk to you in person, and do I need to do it often? And that's much easier to do when I can just walk up to you and talk about it, or get a lot of people in the room, than, like doing it online, doing voice call, ending it, doing something, going back after half an hour, doing it again. So that's the part that suffers the most.
That makes sense. But also, I mean, like, the way, at least for Street Fighter 5, the way they've been developing these characters, or my understanding of the process, is that they've been contracting out a lot of the stuff to, like, different, like, outside contractors. And so that part probably hasn't changed one iota for them.
Probably not, no, because a lot of those contractors Like you have like big contractor studios, which just like this is a studio with the sole focus of just making assets for others. But you also have individual contractors, which is sometimes easier for like art assets, like you commission like a 3D modeler who just is a freelancer for hire, or like a VFX artist or whatever. So that probably doesn't change that much, because with them you already are talking online. You're already like syncing up with the emails and voice calls and meetings online, so that's pretty much the same.
But enough of my theorizing about game dev when I don't work in game dev and don't really know what the hell I'm talking about.
I mean, the info is there. You can ask me. You can check online. It's easy to like learn these things, so I wouldn't worry.
Okay. But I think that's it for us here on Street Fighter V. I guess at the end of the day, my feeling is that Street Fighter V has a lot of cool ideas, but I don't think it comes together even now.
I think I'm gonna play it a bit more, but that's because I'm weird and I usually play games even if I don't like them, not because I'm kind of like, oh, I wanna have a bad time or something like that. It's more I like to understand why I don't like them. So there's still some things about Street Fighter V that I'm not like fully getting, like in terms of opening up opponents, in terms of inputs and stuff like that. So I'm probably gonna spend some more time with it, like probably until I stay in like high silver rank or something like that. But that's more just curiosity. I don't think it's a game I would stick with. I think the pacing is not what I like. I don't think the inputs are what I like. But I think when you're playing it a very specific way and things align, I can have fun with it. But it's also like that's a lot of effort for me to put in to have a return of some fun where I can just, fire up Grand Blue or Blaze Blue or Under Night or whatever and have fun immediately.
Yeah, I could imagine playing some more of it if I had the opportunity to play it offline, but online, I guess I'll probably try out the 5 new characters because I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, but otherwise not really.
It kind of feels like it has the opposite curve for me than Tekken, because Tekken is like a lot of fun on the low level for me, and then you get to the mid to high mid level of play, and then you're kind of like, you just realize you don't know anything, and you get this brick wall, and then you're stuck there for a very long time, and then you move forward. Whereas here, I feel like that wall is very immediate. Like I feel, at the start I have a bad time, and until I learn how not to have a bad time, I'm not gonna start having a good time. But that's like my experience with it. It's not representative of a objective fighting game design experience.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think that takes us to the end of the show. Miodrag, where can people find you and your work on the internet?
You can find me on twitter.com/mdkii. That's MDK Roman numerals 2. And I'm also on twitch.tv/RealSovietBear, where I play video games. And I also stream. I've been streaming about Street Fighter every now and then, so I'll probably do more fighting games.
Okay, cool.
And where can people find you, Six?
Well, I am at Sixdetmar on Twitter, SIXDETTMAR. And my work is at scanlinemedia.com and patreon.com/scanlinemedia. I do a lot of podcasts, I write some articles, I very rarely stream, and I keep busy.
Okay, and before we go, we were a bit late on some episodes, but we kind of have a plan for the next few months, so it will hopefully be back on a regular schedule.
Yeah, I mean, that's just to let you know, we're not apologizing.
Yeah.
Life has been a lot, and, this is just how shit goes sometimes.
Yeah, but this is something we still enjoy doing and want to continue doing. It's just sometimes there are other things in the way.
You know what, Miodrag, I'm going to say that in a less professional way.
Oh.
I missed you.
Oh, I miss you too. Anyway, goodbye, folks.
Peace.